Welcome back to the county seat. Our last segment of the day, we're talking about the disappearance of agricultural lands in the state of Utah. We left quickly into the break saying, what are the solutions? I'm going to throw that out on the table. Any one of you pick it up and not to make a pun, chew on it for a while.
Well, I've done quite a bit of research on this topic. The Quality Growth Commission took a position that quality growth includes protecting our agricultural land, the opportunity to continue to have agriculture in our communities. We're not going to have quality communities without that. So I've taken some time to look at that. And I've come to the conclusion that in Utah, the biggest likely solution is to begin thinking about our farms as businesses and treating them as we treat other businesses. They employ a lot of people. They bring a lot of money into the community. And we're spending a lot of money in our communities on agricultural products that's not going to Utah farmers. So a couple of things. We could look at do more to look at the taxes. The taxes are fairly favorable on agricultural land now, but we could do other things with regard to taxation. We could look at subsidies like we provide to other businesses that might address some of the concerns that farmers have. And we could treat them with the way we treat other businesses. I think we had a discussion about local governments. Many cities treat agriculture as a holding zone. They assume that they're going to develop agricultural land, and so they don't make any effort in their zoning regulations to create a situation where that business can survive and thrive within their city. So if we had some requirements for planning related to agricultural land, that people began to look at, cities in particular began to look at farms as businesses, and what can we do in our zoning regulations, our business licensing regulations, et cetera, that would make it easier for these to continue, that would be a real issue. And might be real profitable. So, I mean, I think we ought to be looking at profitability. There are things that can be done in the zoning regulations, like transfer of development right programs, like clustering ordinances, that allow...
Neither of those terms make sense to me.
Let me tell you what a transfer of development right ordinance is. You would say, we want to protect farmland in this area, that's called a sending zone, and you would allow higher density in another part of your city. And then the developers would purchase the higher density by purchasing the development rights off of farms from the sending zones. And there have been some fairly substantial places in other states where that's been successful. There have been some of those programs that have worked in Utah, some that haven't worked. Partly it's a matter of usually the land is in the county, but the development is in the city, and so you got to get the cooperation between the two entities. That can be difficult. But what cities can do is clustering, where they can say, you've got 100 acres and the current zoning is 1 unit per 20 acres. That means you've got 5 units on that acre. If you put it all in one corner, say on 10 acres in one corner, and you put all those 20 houses up there, maybe you let them put 25. And the rest of it you put under a conservation easement so it can't be developed. You've preserved almost all that land, but you've allowed for development, and you've allowed the development rights on that property to be used. So the farmer can be compensated for all of the development rights on his property, but the development actually only impacts a smaller piece. So there are some things like that that can occur in Utah, and we don't do enough of. I'm going
to let you defend yourself here, because you just took a shot at not paying attention to zoning, but it sounds like the county, Utah County, is very much paying attention to that.
Well, to some degree. I think that it's something that we need to educate the whole public about, because one of the things you get, be it a county or a city, is you begin to fuss with zoning in terms of densities, in terms of the issue that John raised of the clustering concept. You get some pushback from some of the public and the neighbors, if you would. Mm-hmm. I've experienced that as I had the opportunity of working in the city. And so I think we need to educate people about what we're talking about. First off, I don't think we really fully understand as a society the food security issue. We started talking about that at the onset of this program, and I think education is a big part of that. I think as we move forward, we need to recognize that we need to bring society along with us in helping them understand what it is we're trying to do. The other thing that we probably need to do in that process is to talk to the property owners and work with them in trying to understand what is it that would cause them to sell the land. Curtis mentioned the fact that they look at the land as their retirement. Maybe we need to get creative and find another way to develop retirement for those who are in agriculture so that the land can be preserved. I don't have the answer to that. I'm just saying we probably ought to at least have the discussion and begin to see what might be out there. Some smart person may have the answer.
A question for you, Curtis, because you're the most hands-on with like genetic development and crossbreeding and stuff like that. John, you mentioned earlier that there's somebody trying to grow raspberries up in Cache County, but they can't do it because the season's short, and raspberries take so long to develop a crop.
He is actually doing some, but not every year does he harvest.
But the realistic question is, could we get to a point by doing, hybrids and people get afraid of genetic engineered foods, but we used to do it the old-fashioned way by breeding them around. Is there still a potential that some of these lands that have short seasons but all the other elements could actually develop a crop in the future if we work with the ability to produce in a shorter period of time?
The researchers are doing all that. They're trying to find ways to do exactly what you're talking about. It's happening all over the world. There's organizations that meet yearly and they discuss what they found and how they've improved something and how they're working together all around the world. And it could come to something like that, where we're growing a lot of sweet cherries in other countries under tunnels, where they have high tunnels where they're growing sweet cherries at enormous amount of pounds per acre. And they keep the birds out, they keep everything out because it's in kind of a greenhouse type structure. Those types of possibilities are out there. It's just a matter of at what cost. And the current return to the grower just isn't quite there, and so it's at what cost do you want to do that?
I guess the hard reality is that when we become hungry enough as a nation, the cost won't be an object. Because I literally worry about becoming dependent on somebody that doesn't necessarily like us very much to eat. I'm more concerned about that than I am about getting oil from them. So, yes, sir.
I told you earlier, offset, there is an interesting correlation. 40 years ago, we were importing 30% of our oil. This year, we're importing 30% of our food into the U.S. Now, I'm not saying that we're necessarily in 40 years going to be where we are with oil, but the potential is certainly there for us to get to a situation where we're over that 50% threshold, and then somebody else holds us hostage with regard to what food they're going to send us.
Yeah, I think that's a very serious thing, something for everybody to consider. For those of you who stayed with us through the entire hour, thank you very much for joining us on the County Seat. Gentlemen, thank you for coming in and discussing this issue. I think it's a very important one. I encourage everybody at home, research this, think about it, discuss it with your family and your friends, because it is a real security issue. Every bit as much as an Army, a Navy, or a supply of oil, we've all got to eat. And that about wraps it up for this episode of the County Seat. Thank you for joining us. We'll look for you next week.